The first time I heard my mother-in-law call me a gold digger, I was standing outside her study with a tray of freshly brewed jasmine tea. The door was slightly ajar, and her words cut through the air like ice. That girl is nothing but a social climber. Geeta's voice dripped with disdain. Did you see how she fumbled with the chopsticks at dinner? Embarrassing. My son could have married anyone, and he chose her. My hands trembled, nearly spilling the delicate porcelain cups. I'm Sabrina, and 6 months ago, I married into the prestigious Patel family. Coming from a modest background where my parents worked multiple jobs to put me through college, I thought marrying Dawson would be my fairy tale ending. Instead, it became the beginning of a nightmare I never saw coming. Darling, are you all right? Dawson's warm hand touched my shoulder, making me jump. The tea sloshed dangerously close to the rim. You look pale. I'm fine, I forced a smile, steadying the tray. Just bringing your mother her afternoon tea. Let me. He reached for the tray, but I pulled back. No, I want to do this. It's important to me. What I didn't say was that each small gesture was another attempt to win Geeta's approval, another brick in the wall of acceptance I was desperately trying to build. I knocked on the study door, interrupting what sounded like a heated conversation between Geeta and her brother Stuart. The room fell silent. Come in, Geeta called out, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. I entered, placing the tray on her mahogany desk. I thought you might enjoy some jasmine tea, Mother. Stuart smiled warmly at me, but Geeta barely glanced up from her papers. Just leave it there. And Sabrina? Next time, bring the blue porcelain set. This one is common. My cheeks burned. The set I'd chosen was a wedding gift from my parents. Actually, I quite like this set, Stuart interjected, picking up a cup. It has character. Not everything needs to be inherited or expensive to have value. Geeta's lips tightened into a thin line. Well, brother, we'll have to agree to disagree on that. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of the papers on her desk. Something about estate shares and signatures. Stuart noticed my glance and quickly shuffled the papers together. Later that evening, I found myself in our kitchen, aggressively chopping vegetables for dinner, when Dawson's sister Nicole wandered in. Don't take it personally, she said, hopping onto a counter. Mom's like that with everyone at first. 3 years of dating and 6 months of marriage isn't at first, Nicole. She shrugged. Look at the bright side. At least you're not at the country club functions yet. That's where she really puts on a show. What do you mean? Oh, you'll see. There's one next week. Mom's already telling everyone how you're adjusting to our lifestyle. Nicole's phone buzzed, and she jumped down. Just wear something conservative, and maybe practice with those chopsticks. I slammed the knife down. I grew up using a fork. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course not. Nicole patted my arm. But in this family, everything is about appearance. You'll learn. That night, lying in bed beside Dawson, I couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. Our 3-year-old daughter Sadie was sleeping peacefully in the next room, blissfully unaware of the social warfare happening around her. You're tossing and turning, Dawson murmured, pulling me closer. I overheard your mother today, I admitted. She called me a gold digger. Dawson sighed. Mom's just traditional. She'll come around. Traditional? Dawson, she actively despises me. And what was that meeting with Stuart about? I saw estate papers. Business stuff, he cut me off. Nothing for you to worry about. But there was something in his tone that made me worry more. I'd seen that look before, when he was hiding something significant. Just then, Sadie's cry pierced the night. I started to get up, but Dawson stopped me. I'll go. You rest. As I watched him leave, I caught sight of my reflection in the bedroom mirror. The woman staring back at me looked lost, uncertain. Everything Geeta probably saw when she looked at me. But underneath that uncertainty, I felt something else stirring. Determination. I picked up my phone and texted my neighbor and friend Jillian. Need to talk. Tomorrow? Her response was immediate. Wine and sympathy coming right up. I put my phone down and closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I kept hearing fragments of Geeta's conversation with Stuart. We need to clean this up before the shares meeting. Something wasn't right in this perfect family, and for Sadie's sake, I needed to figure out what. If Geeta wanted to play games, she'd learn that this common daughter-in-law could play them too. Little did I know, my decision to fight back would unravel secrets that would shake the Patel family to its core. You need to document everything, Jillian said, pouring me another glass of wine. We sat on her back porch, watching our kids play in the yard. Every snide comment, every backhanded compliment, write it all down. I watched Sadie chasing butterflies with Jillian's son. What good would that do? Trust me, I learned this during my divorce. People like your mother-in-law count on others being too polite to call them out. They rely on gaslighting, making you question your own memories. The afternoon sun caught my wedding ring, and I twisted it nervously. Dawson thinks I'm being oversensitive. Of course he does, Jillian scoffed. He grew up with her manipulation. It's normal to him. A shriek of laughter drew our attention. Sadie had fallen, but before I could move, she bounced right back up, giggling. She's so resilient, Jillian observed. Like her mother should be. My phone buzzed. A text from Nicole. Emergency family dinner tonight. Mom's insisting. Wear the blue dress she gave you. I groaned. Speaking of manipulation, what now? Surprise family dinner. Probably another opportunity for Geeta to showcase how unsuitable I am. Jillian's eyes narrowed. You mentioned estate papers yesterday. Could it be about that? Maybe. But whenever I ask Dawson about family business, he changes the subject. That's not right. Jillian set down her glass. You're his wife, not some outsider. Later that evening, dressed in Geeta's chosen blue dress, I entered the dining room to find Stuart already there, deep in conversation with Geeta. The paperwork needs to be perfect, he was saying. One mistake and… They fell silent as I approached. Geeta's eyes swept over me. At least the dress looks appropriate, though your hair could use some work. I think she looks lovely. Zara, Dawson's cousin, walked in behind me. She squeezed my arm supportively. The natural look suits her. Dinner was a masterclass in subtle warfare. Geeta had prepared all of Dawson's favorite traditional dishes, none of which I could properly pronounce. Sabrina, Geeta called out sweetly, would you like me to show you how to make these properly sometime? I know your background didn't expose you to such cuisine. Before I could respond, Nicole jumped in. Mom, Sabrina makes amazing food. Her lasagna last week was incredible. Yes, well, Geeta smiled tightly. I suppose some people prefer simpler dishes. I gripped my fork harder, remembering Jillian's advice about documentation. If only I could record these conversations, prove I wasn't imagining the constant belittling. Actually, Dawson spoke up, I have an announcement. He reached for my hand under the table. Sabrina and I are thinking of renovating the East Wing for Sadie's playroom. The silence was deafening. The East Wing was Geeta's domain. Absolutely not. Geeta's voice was steel. That wing has been in the family for generations. We don't need children's toys destroying its character. Mother, it's our house too. Is it? Stuart interrupted, exchanging a loaded look with Geeta. Perhaps we should discuss the ownership structure at the shares meeting next week. My head snapped up. What shares meeting? Family business. Geeta waved dismissively. Nothing that concerns you. After dinner, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Zara, who was helping me load the dishwasher. You know, she said quietly, you should pay attention to those meetings they keep mentioning. Something's not right. What do you mean? She glanced around before continuing. Let's just say Aunt Geeta's been making some interesting moves lately. The estate's ownership isn't as straightforward as everyone thinks. Before she could elaborate, Nicole burst in. Mom's looking for you, Zara. As Zara left, Nicole lingered. Sorry about dinner. Mom's just protective of the family legacy. Protective or possessive? I asked. Nicole's expression flickered. Just be careful, okay? Mom always gets what she wants. Always. That night, I couldn't sleep. Dawson's soft breathing beside me did nothing to calm my racing thoughts. I picked up my phone and started typing. Day 1 of documentation. Called my cooking simple. Dismissed my right to house decisions. Secret shares meeting planned. Something about estate ownership. I stared at the notes, feeling ridiculous yet vindicated. But was written documentation enough? As if answering my question, muffled voices drifted up from Gita's study below our bedroom. The transfer must happen before they realize, Gita was saying. Once the papers are signed. I pressed my ear to the floor, straining to hear more, but the voices became too faint. That's when it hit me. Documentation needed to be more than just my word against hers. I needed proof. Real, undeniable evidence of what was happening behind closed doors. I opened my laptop and typed, hidden audio recorders. As the search results loaded, my hands shook slightly. This was crossing a line, but hadn't Gita crossed several already? For Sadie's future, for my sanity, for the truth. I needed to know what was really going on in this house. And I knew exactly how to find out. The tiny microphone felt heavy in my palm as I stood in Gita's study at 6 a.m., my heart pounding. Everyone was still asleep, the perfect time to plant the first device. I'd ordered 3 professional-grade audio recorders, small enough to hide, but powerful enough to capture clear sound. Just breathe, I whispered to myself, securing the first microphone behind a heavy curtain. The morning sun was barely peeking through the windows as I carefully arranged the fabric to conceal it. I'd chosen my locations strategically: the study, the formal dining room, and the living room, Gita's favorite spots for private conversations. Each recorder connected to an app on my phone, allowing me to listen in real time or play back recordings later. The house creaked, and I froze. Footsteps. Sabrina? Dawson's voice called from upstairs. Where are you? I rushed out of the study, nearly colliding with Nicole in the hallway. What are you doing up so early? She asked, eyeing me suspiciously. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get some water. The lie came easily, too easily. Back in our bedroom, Dawson was getting dressed for work. Everything okay? You've been acting strange lately. I'm fine, I smiled, but my phone felt like it was burning in my pocket. Just adjusting to everything. The first recording came through around noon. I was in the garden with Sadie when my phone buzzed. Gita's voice, crystal clear. Stewart, the paperwork is ready. Once I secure majority control at the meeting, we can proceed with the sale. And Dawson? Stewart's voice was cautious. My son is too trusting. He won't question it until it's too late. My hands shook as I listened. Sale? What sale? Mom! Sadie's voice snapped me back to reality. Look at the butterfly. That evening, I sat in our bedroom, headphones in, listening to the day's recordings. Most were mundane. Household staff discussions, phone calls about charity events. Then, Nicole, dear, Gita's voice crackled through. Have you considered what we discussed? Mom, I can't spy on Sabrina for you. She's family now. Family, Gita scoffed. She's an obstacle, one we need to remove before she ruins everything we've built. The bedroom door opened suddenly. I yanked out my earbuds as Dawson walked in. What are you listening to? He asked. Just music. He sat beside me on the bed. Sabrina, what's really going on? You've been distant, secretive. I stared at my phone, guilt and anger warring inside me. Do you trust me, Dawson? Of course I do. Then why won't you tell me about the shares meeting? About the sale your mother's planning? His face darkened. How do you know about that? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with another recording notification. The sound played automatically through my earbuds, which lay between us on the bed. Gita's voice filled the silence. Once we sell the estate, that girl and her brat won't have any claim to our family's legacy. Dawson snatched the earbuds. Are you recording my mother? I had to know the truth. I grabbed my phone before he could take it. She's planning something, Dawson. Something that affects all of us, including Sadie. By spying? This is illegal, Sabrina. What's illegal is your mother trying to sell our home without consulting us. We live here too. Sadie's growing up here. He ran his hands through his hair, pacing. You don't understand. The estate. It's complicated. Then explain it to me. I stood up, blocking his path. For once, treat me like a partner, not an outsider. A knock at the door made us both jump. Nicole stood there looking uncomfortable. Mom wants everyone in the living room. Now. My blood ran cold. Had she discovered the microphones? But in the living room, Gita was all smiles. I've decided to host a pre-meeting dinner next week. All shareholders must attend. Her eyes locked onto mine. Family only, of course. I'm coming, I said firmly. Dear, she smiled sweetly, these matters are beyond your expertise. My wife attends. Dawson's voice was quiet but firm. Or I don't. The room fell silent. Gita's smile never wavered, but her eyes turned to ice. Very well. Do dress appropriately, Sabrina. Later that night, I lay awake, listening to the recordings again. Fragments of conversations painted a disturbing picture. Secret meetings, document transfers, plans for the estate's sale. But one recording stopped me cold. Everything's set, Stewart was saying. The buyers don't know about the tax issue or the property liens. Once they sign? Perfect, Gita replied. And the offshore accounts are ready? I sat up in bed, my mind racing. This wasn't just about excluding me anymore. This was fraud. My phone lit up with a text from Zara. Need to talk. Tomorrow, alone. I know what they're planning. I glanced at Dawson's sleeping form and typed back, Coffee shop on 5th, 10 a.m. The recordings were a weapon now, but I had to be careful how I used them. One wrong move, and I could lose everything. My marriage, my home, my daughter's future. But Gita had started this war, and I intended to finish it. The coffee shop was quiet when Zara slid into the seat across from me, her designer handbag hitting the table with a thud. Her usually perfect makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. Before I tell you anything, she whispered, leaning forward, you need to know that coming to you could cost me everything. I pushed a coffee toward her. I have recordings, Zara, of Gita and Stewart discussing offshore accounts and hidden property liens. Her eyes widened. You've been bugging the house? That's actually brilliant. She took a shaky breath. But it's worse than you think. The estate isn't just being sold, it's being stripped. What do you mean? Aunt Gita's been siphoning money for years. The estate's practically bankrupt, but she's hidden it well. The sale is her exit strategy before everything collapses. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Does Dawson know? Nobody knows except Stewart and the accountants, and now us. She pulled out her phone, showing me a series of emails. I work at the family's bank, remember? These transactions raised red flags, but Stewart buried the reports. A text from Dawson lit up my phone. Where are you? We need to talk. I have to go. I gathered my things. Thank you, Zara. She grabbed my arm. Be careful. If Aunt Gita discovers you know. I found Dawson in his home office, surrounded by papers. His face was ashen. I've been going through the estate documents, he said without looking up. After hearing those recordings, something felt off. I closed the door. What did you find? Missing funds, unauthorized transfers, Mom's signature on documents I never knew existed. He finally met my eyes. You were right. Something's very wrong. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling. There's more you need to hear. For the next hour, we listened to recording after recording. Gita's schemes unfolded like a twisted symphony. Plans to sell the estate to unsuspecting buyers, hidden accounts in tax havens, discussions of how to keep Dawson under control. I trusted her, Dawson's voice cracked. All these years. A knock interrupted us. Nicole poked her head in. Mom's looking for... Are you okay? Dawson quickly wiped his eyes. Fine. What does she want? She's called an emergency pre-meeting. Everyone's gathering in the study. My heart raced. The study, where my first microphone was hidden. In the study, Geeta sat behind her massive desk, like a queen holding court. Stuart stood beside her, while other family members filled the chairs around the room. As you know, Geeta began, the shares meeting is approaching, but recent events have forced us to accelerate our timeline. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The recorder was picking up everything. The estate requires modernization, she continued. We've found buyers willing to take on this burden, allowing us to preserve our family's legacy in other ways. What buyers? Dawson stood up. Why wasn't I consulted? Geeta's smile tightened. Darling, you've been so busy with your own family. Her eyes flicked to me. We didn't want to burden you. You mean you didn't want him to discover the truth, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. The room fell silent. Excuse me? Geeta's voice could have frozen fire. I pulled out my phone. Should we discuss the offshore accounts, or the hidden liens you're planning to dump on unsuspecting buyers? Stuart stepped forward. That's quite enough. No, Dawson cut in. Let her speak. I played the recording from earlier that week. Geeta's voice filled the room, discussing fraud and deception with clinical precision. The color drained from her face. You've been spying on me? In my own home? Our home, I corrected. The one you're trying to steal from your own son. Chaos erupted. Nicole gasped. Stuart started shouting about illegal recordings. But Dawson's voice cut through it all. Is it true, Mother? Geeta's mask cracked. For a moment, I saw fear in her eyes. Everything I did was for this family's preservation. By committing fraud? Dawson slammed his hands on her desk. By stealing from us? You don't understand the pressure, the expectations. The shares meeting is canceled, Dawson announced. And you, he turned to Stuart, stay away from my family. You can't do this. Geeta stood, trembling. I am still the majority shareholder. Actually, Zara spoke up from the doorway, the bank's fraud department might disagree. I filed the reports this morning. Geeta sank back into her chair, her empire crumbling around her. That night, after everyone had gone, I found Dawson in Sadie's room, watching our daughter sleep. I'm sorry, I whispered. About the recordings. I never meant. Don't. He pulled me close. You protected our family when I was too blind to see the threat. He kissed my forehead. But this isn't over. The estate's finances are a mess, and Mother won't go down without a fight. Then we'll fight together. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. I have documents that will ensure Geeta never recovers from this. Fred Murray, family attorney. I showed Dawson the message. His jaw set with determination. Ready to end this? He asked. I thought of Sadie, of our home, of every snide comment and manipulation I'd endured. More than ready. Fred Murray's office felt too small for the weight of the documents spread across his desk. The family attorney adjusted his glasses as he pointed to various highlighted sections. These transfers, he tapped a paper, all lead back to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Geeta's been planning this for years. How much? Dawson's voice was tight. Conservative estimate, $12 million. I gripped the armrest of my chair. That's impossible. The estate is worth considerably more than what's on paper, Fred finished. Your mother-in-law has been undervaluing assets while skimming profits for decades. A knock at the door made us all jump. Zara slipped in, clutching a leather portfolio. Sorry I'm late. The bank's compliance team had questions about the documents I submitted. She pulled out more papers. These are the latest transfer records. Aunt Geeta tried to move another $5 million this morning. Did it go through? I asked. No. We froze the accounts. Zara smiled grimly. She's probably discovering that right now. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a recording notification. I put it on speaker. What do you mean frozen? Geeta's voice shrieked. Stuart, fix this immediately. I can't. Stuart sounded panicked. They're asking questions about the offshore accounts, about the property valuations. Then destroy the documents. All of them. Fred leaned forward. This recording alone is evidence of attempted destruction of evidence. Combined with the financial records, she'll go to prison, Dawson said quietly. Unless, Fred held up a finger, she agrees to our terms. I frowned. What terms? Full confession, complete financial transparency. She steps down from all family businesses and transfers control to Dawson. He paused. In exchange, we don't press charges. Another recording notification. This time, it was Nicole's voice. Mom, please, just tell the truth, for once. Truth? Geeta scoffed. The truth is, I built this family's fortune while your father gambled us into debt. I protected us. By stealing? Nicole shot back. By treating Sabrina like dirt because you were afraid she'd discover your secrets? Dawson reached for my hand as we listened. That girl, Geeta spat, knows nothing about sacrifice, about maintaining our position in society. The parties, the donations, the connections. It all costs money. Money you stole! Nicole's voice hardened. I'm done covering for you, Mom. Done. The recording ended. Zara broke the silence. Aunt Geeta's hosting a garden party tomorrow. Half the city's elite will be there. Perfect timing for a confrontation, Fred mused. No. I straightened in my chair. Perfect timing for justice. Back home, I found Stuart waiting in the driveway. His usual confident demeanor was gone. Sabrina, he called out softly, we need to talk. About how you helped Geeta steal from her own family. He winced. I can help you. There's more evidence. Documents Geeta doesn't know I kept. Insurance, you might say. Why would you help us now? Because, he glanced around nervously, she's planning something for tomorrow's party, something desperate. My phone buzzed again. Another recording. I held it up so we both could hear. The party is our chance, Geeta was saying. Once the new buyers sign, no one can stop the sale. Not Dawson, not that witch he married, no one. Stuart's face paled. She's going to try to force the sale tomorrow, during the party. The buyers are coming disguised as guests. I studied his face. Why should I trust you? He pulled out a USB drive. Because this contains every transaction, every fraud, every scheme from the past 20 years, including my part in it. His hands shook. I was wrong. About everything. Inside, I found Dawson in his office with Nicole. Stuart gave me this. I held up the USB drive, explaining what I'd learned. Nicole stood up. Mom's getting sloppy, desperate. She called me earlier, trying to convince me to help her one last time. Will you? Dawson asked quietly. No! Nicole's eyes filled with tears. I'm done being her puppet. My phone lit up with a text from Jillian. Saw moving trucks at Geeta's private villa. She's packing up. She's planning to run, I realized. After the sale tomorrow, she'll disappear with the money. Dawson's jaw clenched. Not if we stop her first. We'll need help, Nicole said. Other family members who've suspected but stayed quiet. Zara can rally them, I suggested. And Fred has the legal documents ready. Tomorrow, then. Dawson stood. At the garden party. I thought of all the times Geeta had belittled me, threatened my place in the family, tried to turn Dawson against me. Tomorrow she would learn that her perfectly orchestrated world could crumble just as easily as the tea sets she loved so much. My phone buzzed one final time that night. A group text from Geeta to all family members. Tomorrow's garden party will be a celebration of our family's legacy. Attendance is mandatory. Formal attire required. If only she knew what kind of celebration it would really be. The morning of the garden party dawned bright and clear. I stood in front of my closet, staring at the dress Geeta had suggested I wear. A matronly gray thing that would make me fade into the background. Instead, I pulled out a crimson silk dress that hugged every curve. If Geeta wanted a show, I'd give her one. Mommy, you look like a princess! Sadie bounced on our bed in her party dress. You both look beautiful, Dawson said from the doorway. His face was tense. Jillian's here to pick up Sadie. I knelt before my daughter. Remember what we talked about? You're having a special play date today. Because grown-ups are having a boring party, she recited, rolling her eyes exactly like her father. Once Sadie was safely away, the house burst into controlled chaos. Zara arrived first, carrying files from the bank. Nicole followed with a group of family members I'd only seen at formal events, all wearing expressions of grim determination. The buyers are confirmed, Zara whispered, showing me her phone. 3 men from an investment group. They're arriving at 2. And the police? Dawson asked. On standby, Fred answered, straightening his tie. They'll move in once we give the signal. The garden filled with guests as the afternoon wore on. I watched from an upstairs window as Gita held court, resplendent in an expensive designer dress, laughing and charming everyone around her. Ready? Dawson touched my shoulder. I checked my phone one last time. The recordings were queued up, ready to play through the garden's speaker system. Ready? We descended the stairs together, and I felt Gita's eyes lock onto my dress immediately. Her smile flickered for just a second. Darling! She air-kissed my cheek. That's quite an attention-seeking choice. I learned from the best. I smiled sweetly. She gripped my arm, nails digging in. Don't make a scene today. This party is important. Oh, I know exactly how important it is. I spotted the buyers, 3 men in expensive suits, trying too hard to blend in. Stuart was leading them toward Gita's private study. Now, I whispered into my phone. The garden speakers crackled to life with Gita's own voice. Once the buyers sign, we'll transfer the money offshore. They'll never know about the liens or the debt. The party fell silent. Gita froze, her champagne glass slipping from her fingers. What is this? She hissed. More recordings played. Her conversations about fraud, about hiding money, about destroying evidence. Each revelation landed like a physical blow. Security! She shouted. Shut off those speakers! They won't help you. Nicole stepped forward. Not this time, Mother. The buyers emerged from the study, faces dark with anger. Is this true? Are you trying to defraud us? Of course not. Gita laughed nervously. This is just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I pulled out a tablet, displaying the financial records. Like these transfer records? Or these offshore accounts? You! She pointed at me, voice shaking. You did this. You destroyed our family. No, Mother. Dawson's voice cut through the chaos. You did that yourself. Police officers began entering the garden. Fred stepped forward with documents in hand. Mrs. Patel, he announced formally, you have a choice. Sign these papers transferring control of all family assets to your son, or face criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. You can't prove anything, she snarled. Actually, Stuart emerged from the crowd, holding up the USB drive. We can prove everything. Gita's carefully maintained facade cracked. She looked around wildly, seeing former allies step back, watching her perfectly curated world crumble. I did everything for this family, she whispered. Everything. Sign the papers, Mother, Dawson said quietly. Don't make this worse. Her hand shook as she took the pen. Each signature seemed to age her years, until finally, she looked up with tears in her eyes. I hope you're happy, she spat at me. You've won. This wasn't about winning, I replied. It was about justice. As the police led her away for questioning, guests quickly dispersed. Nicole approached me, looking shell-shocked. I never thought she'd actually... She trailed off. I know, I hugged her. I'm sorry it had to end this way. Don't be, she straightened up. It needed to end. Later that night, after the lawyers left and the evidence was secured, I found Dawson in Gita's study, staring at old family photos. Having regrets? I asked softly. No, he turned to me. Just thinking about what to tell Sadie. I wrapped my arms around him. We'll tell her that sometimes doing the right thing is hard, but necessary. My phone buzzed. A message from Zara. Bank confirmed all accounts frozen. She can't touch anything now. It's really over, I breathed. Not quite. Dawson kissed my forehead. Tomorrow we start rebuilding. The right way this time. Through the window, I watched the garden staff cleaning up the remains of the party. Like them, we'd clean up the mess Gita left behind. But first, I had one more recording to deal with. One that would ensure she never tried to reclaim her power. The final battle was coming, and this time, I held all the cards. The police station's interview room felt smaller than it looked on TV. Gita sat across from me, her designer outfit replaced by wrinkled clothes from yesterday. Without her usual makeup and perfectly styled hair, she looked older, vulnerable. "Why did you request this meeting?" she asked, her voice hoarse. I placed my phone on the table between us. "Because there's one recording you haven't heard yet." Her eyes narrowed. "Haven't you done enough damage?" "This isn't about damage," I pressed play. "This is about truth." The recording started, a conversation from 3 months ago between Gita and Stuart. "The girl's smarter than we thought," Stuart was saying. "She's asking questions about the trust fund." "Dawson's trust fund was dissolved years ago," Gita replied. "I used it to cover the losses from the Miami property." "And Sadie's education fund?" "Gone, along with the others. But once we sell, it won't matter. We'll be—" I stopped the recording. "You stole your own granddaughter's future." Gita's hands trembled. "You don't understand. The family was in debt. Your father-in-law's gambling." "Stop lying!" I slammed my hand on the table. "The bank records show everything. You didn't save the family from debt. You created it with your lifestyle, your need for control, your offshore accounts." "What do you want from me?" she whispered. A full confession. Every detail, every scheme. Or this recording goes to the DA, and you'll face additional charges for stealing from minors." Her facade cracked completely. "They'll give me years." "Yes, unless you cooperate now." The door opened, and Fred walked in with a document. "The plea agreement, as discussed." Gita stared at the papers, then at me. "You planned this all along." "I learned from you, remember? Always be 3 steps ahead." 2 hours later, I walked out of the police station with Gita's signed confession. Dawson was waiting in the car. "Did she agree?" he asked as I slid into the passenger seat. "Everything. The trust funds, the property fraud, even tax evasion we didn't know about." He gripped the steering wheel. "I should have seen it. All those years." "Hey," I touched his arm. "You saw what she wanted you to see. We all did." At home, we found Nicole and Zara in the kitchen with Sadie, making cookies. "Mommy!" Sadie ran to me, covered in flour. "We're making happy cookies." "Happy cookies?" "Because the mean lady is gone," she said matter-of-factly. The adults exchanged glances. We hadn't told her anything about Gita's arrest, but children always seem to understand more than we realized. "The bank board is meeting tomorrow," Zara announced, wiping her hands. "They're voting to approve the recovery of all diverted funds." Nicole added, "And I found documents in Mom's study. She had a whole network of fake companies. The forensic accountants are having a field day." My phone buzzed. A text from Stuart. "Meeting set with international investigators. Ready to tell them everything." "Stuart's cooperating fully," I told Dawson. "His testimony will ensure the overseas accounts are frozen." "Good." Dawson pulled out his laptop. "Because look what I found." He showed us emails between Gita and various social elite, detailing how she'd manipulated property values and investment schemes throughout their circle. "Half of upper society was involved?" Nicole gasped. "Or victims," Dawson corrected. "She played everyone." The doorbell rang. Fred entered with more documents. "The judge approved the asset freeze," he announced. "And there's more. The estate's true value? Nearly triple what Gita claimed. Once we recover the hidden assets, the family's financial future is secure." "Including Sadie's education fund?" I asked. "Especially that. I've already set up a protected trust. No one can touch it." Sadie tugged at my dress. "Can we have a party? A real one without scary people?" I laughed, picking her up. "Yes, baby, the best party ever." That evening, as news of Gita's confession spread through social circles, our phones wouldn't stop buzzing. Former family friends, business associates, all claiming they'd always suspected something wasn't right. Funny how they're all experts now, Nicole said bitterly, reading the messages. Let them talk, I replied. We have proof. We have truth. Dawson called us to the dining room, where he'd laid out papers across the table. These are the new family business structures, he explained. Transparent, ethical, everything documented and above board. And this, Fred added, placing another document down, is the new estate ownership agreement. Equal shares between all legitimate family members. Including Sabrina? Nicole asked. Especially Sabrina. Dawson squeezed my hand. She saved this family. She deserves an equal voice in its future. My phone lit up one last time. A message from the prison where Gita was being held. I underestimated you. Perhaps that was my biggest mistake. Gee, I showed it to Dawson. No, he said firmly. Her biggest mistake was thinking she could steal our daughter's future and get away with it. I looked around at our reformed family, Nicole, Zara, Fred, all united in building something better from the ashes of Gita's schemes. Tomorrow, I said, we start fresh. Together. But first, we had some happy cookies to finish baking. The autumn breeze rustled through the garden as I supervised the workers taking down the last of Gita's pretentious decorative statues. In their place, we were installing a playground for Sadie and her cousins. The swing set goes there, I pointed, then felt a tug on my sleeve. Mrs. Sabrina? Maria, our housekeeper of 15 years, held out an envelope. Found this while cleaning the East Wing storage. Inside was a letter dated just before my wedding to Dawson, written in Gita's elegant script. My dearest son, I fear you're making a terrible mistake. This girl will destroy everything we've built. Still finding her little time bombs? Nicole approached, carrying coffee. Her last attempts to control the narrative, I crumpled the letter. How was the court hearing? Final sentencing next week. The prosecutor says, with all the evidence, she's looking at 12 years minimum. My phone buzzed. A message from Stuart. International accounts recovered. Full amount restored. Thank you for giving me a chance to make things right. Inside, Dawson was meeting with Fred and the new board members. Through the study window, I could see him confidently leading the discussion, no longer the conflicted son trying to please his mother. Mommy! Sadie ran out with Zara chasing her. Look what Aunt Zara got me! She proudly displayed a business card. Future CEO in training. Starting her early? I raised an eyebrow at Zara. Someone needs to run this place when we're old, she grinned. Might as well be someone with both brains and heart. The meeting ended, and Dawson joined us in the garden. The board approved everything. New charitable foundation, scholarship programs, ethical investment guidelines. And the staff pensions? I asked. Restored and increased. Maria cried when I told her. Nicole checked her phone. The society papers are having a field day. Prominent families renaissance, from scandal to salvation. Let them talk, I said. Actions speak louder than headlines. Just then, Jillian arrived with a stack of papers. The community center plans are approved. Construction starts next month. We were converting one of Gita's empty properties into a resource center for families in need, something she would have considered beneath her status. Perfect timing, Fred emerged from the house. The judge signed off on using the recovered funds for community investment. It's all legal and transparent. Sadie tugged at Dawson's sleeve. Daddy, can we have the swings now? Of course, Princess. Want to help pick the colors? As they walked toward the playground area, Nicole touched my arm. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but the house feels like a home now. Speaking of home, Zara interrupted, wait until you see this. She pulled out her tablet, showing us security footage from Gita's old country club. Several of her former society friends were being escorted out, their own financial misdeeds exposed during the investigation. Karma's quite the equalizer, I mused. Mrs. Sabrina, Maria called from the terrace. The new family portrait photographer is here. We gathered in the garden. Dawson, Sadie, Nicole, Zara, even Stuart. Around the old oak tree Gita had always hated for dropping leaves on her precious lawn. Everyone ready? The photographer asked. Wait, I said, pulling out my phone. I played the final recording I'd kept private until now. I built this family, Gita's voice declared from years ago. Without me, they're nothing. I deleted the file as her words faded into the autumn air. Now we're ready, I smiled. This is our family's true foundation. The camera clicked, capturing not just our images, but a moment of genuine joy, something Gita's perfectly posed portraits never managed. Later, as sunset painted the garden in gold, Dawson found me by the new swing set. Remember what you said when we first met? He asked. About how wealth doesn't define family? You thought I was naive. I thought you were right. I just didn't have the courage to live it then. He pulled me close. Thank you for showing us a better way. Mommy, Daddy, Sadie called from the terrace. Aunt Nicole made hot chocolate. Inside, the house buzzed with warm conversation and laughter. The formal dining room, where Gita once held court, was now filled with family playing board games. The study where she plotted her schemes had become a shared workspace for charitable projects. My phone lit up one last time. An email from the prison warden. Mrs. Patel requests a final meeting. I showed it to Dawson. Your choice, he said. But remember, you don't owe her anything. I typed my response. The past is closed. Our future is bright enough without shadows. As I hit send, Sadie climbed into my lap with her hot chocolate mustache, and Nicole dealt another round of cards. Outside, the playground equipment gleamed in the setting sun, promising years of happy memories to come. We didn't need hidden recordings anymore. Our truth was right here, in the open, stronger than any secret could ever be. Your turn, Mommy. Sadie handed me my cards. Are you ready to play? I looked at my family, real, honest, united, and smiled. I've never been more ready.